The COVID-19 hit the energy markets hard, but we questioned what will be the more longer-term effects of the pandemic on the energy transition. How must the industry and the companies and government adapt? Liv Hovem, the CEO of DNV Oil and Gas, gave us some answers when our project manager, Anne Ekern, recently had a chat with Liv. Watch this.
Energy transition is something that all oil and gas companies are talking about, and I know DNV as well in particular. And some are saying that COVID-19 may speed up the energy transitions, whereas others, they argue that it will slow it down. Yes. Could you share your reflections on this topic?
Yeah, I can do that, and it is a very interesting question that we actually have spent some time on to try to assess. And in this year's energy transition outlook that we actually launch next week, we forecast that the global long-term energy demand actually goes down due to COVID-19, and it goes down about 8% in the long term. Of course, what we often are interested in related to the energy transition is also the emissions and the CO2, especially the CO2 emissions, and we see that they also have an increased decline, if you can say it like that. But if we kind of look at in the bigger picture, it has very little effect on the climate and on the carbon budgets. So what we can say in a general term, due to the economical and the behavioral changes and less travel and all that, is that humanity has kind of gained approximately 1 year in order to achieve the 1.5 degree target, and a couple of years in order to achieve the 2.2 degree target. So not a big change in that respect. So then the question is, will the COVID accelerate? And this is also difficult to assess, because we believe that to accelerate the energy transition, it is about policies. Because we actually already now have the technologies that are required to do the energy transition that is required to meet the climate targets. But the policies tend to lag a bit, and we do actually need policies to incentivize the correct behavior and to incentivize the right, or the uptake of the right technologies. And now we see that governments, they have lined up big economic stimuli packages, but we also see that they also point to various directions. We see some of these packages really are spent wisely on the uptake of renewables, but other packages are more concerned about employment and stimulating traditional industry. So, and we see that they go both ways. So our assumption as per today is that they will cancel each other out, and that the COVID will not have a big effect on the energy transition pace.
Reaching the Paris Agreement goals by 2050 seems to be on the agenda of all oil and gas companies, and a big part of that is reducing carbon emissions. What is your view on that? Can you share and elaborate some of your perspectives there?
Yeah, so my view on what companies can do. I think, as you say, there is an increased pressure from the society, but I would also say from within the companies. I think the employees really want to see that the companies are doing something towards the climate goals, so I think the pressure is everywhere. I think we can, for the companies, we can divide in the short-term and long-term perspective. And I think from, I mean, a lot of the companies have come out now with strong ambitions. And what we see is that it's much related to reducing emissions in the production of the oil and gas. And from an energy sector perspective, about 15% of the emissions actually comes from the process of getting the oil and gas from the ground and to the end consumer. So there is something there. And again, the technologies are available, and for that I see that the companies are working on electrification of offshore assets or assets anywhere, working on flaring, reducing flaring, detecting and stopping leakages of methane, but also digitizing the entire value chains to become more efficient is something that is happening. On the longer run is more complex. I think the companies need to work on decarbonizing the gas. And of course then we immediately see that that's very much linked to the policies. It's linked to carbon capture and storage and the uptake of that technology. I think it's important that the industry and the companies start partnering together with the government to get the right incentives, to get the technologies scaling quick enough to achieve the decarbonization we need to do. Because the forecast that I mentioned initially that we release next week, we see that in 2050 the industry have decarbonized or reduced emission by 36% with the current efforts in place, and that is not enough. So a step up is much needed.
So more effort is needed from the companies.
Absolutely.
I've seen that hydrogen has been touted as the fuel to transition to, and that we may even see it replace natural gas. Can you share your perspectives on that? And also, how do you consider other renewable energy sources and the future of those?
Yeah, hydrogen is very exciting, and there's been so much buzz about that over the summer, I think. We see that policies now in Europe, in China and North America actually is pointing to that direction to scale that uptake of hydrogen. So it's really interesting. And we launched a paper heading to hydrogen a few months back. And as part of that work, we surveyed 1,000 professionals in the industry, and we actually see a shift also in the sentiment there as well. So I think 60% of the respondents said that their organization will actively engage in the hydrogen economy. So I think there's a big movement now. But of course, hydrogen is, when we talk about hydrogen in relation to natural gas especially, we also need to talk about CCS. So again, we point to policy and how important it is to scale up that technology in order to kind of unleash the potential of hydrogen. And also hydrogen is a little bit wrapped in with the renewables and CCS. So it is kind of, CCS is kind of the key to make hydrogen and renewables play together and partner and to balance each other in the future energy system. So there is a big potential, but there is some policy to be made, and also we feel that there are really four issues around hydrogen. I mean, the safety case for hydrogen have to be proven. So industry and the regulators have to go together to define the safety standards and even the safety case for each use case of hydrogen if we are to bring it into domestic homes and also in industrial purposes. So the safety, really the evidence for safety is important, and then we need to build out the hydrogen infrastructure. And even in countries that already have a very built out gas infrastructure, there is a lot of work to be done to repurpose and reuse that infrastructure. So that is a big thing. I mentioned CCS as the third element. The uptake of CCS is really crucial. And finally, fourth is the policy, really to bring that to the market, or partner policy and technology to bring the hydrogen to the market. But it is a long process, and we think that we will see the decade before we really see evidence of the hydrogen in the energy systems.
So a lot of things need to come together. How about other renewable energy sources? Do you want to comment briefly on?
No, I think that it's growing nicely, and offshore floating wind and offshore wind, solar, that will grow. We see that these energy sources are the ones growing towards 2050 together with gas. But again, we need to decarbonize the gas in order to make energy system that is a low carbon energy system.
So the focused work needs to continue.
It has to continue and it has to scale, go faster.
COVID has challenged us to do business without interaction. Being part of an international company, do you expect that to continue? What are your thoughts about the future of work?
Yes, well, some reflection first. What happened? Yeah, we are 12,000 people in DNVGL, and suddenly everyone were locked into their homes in a way, and we could only interact remotely. And I think we were all taken by surprise, and we're also quite impressed with what we actually could achieve in that session, not only internally but also with our clients. And I must say, personally, I've had really close meetings because you sit very, face to face. So that has been a revelation. But I think that it cannot be the permanent way to work, because I realize that when I want to create something with my colleagues, want to develop something, it's much more efficient to meet. But then when I'm more in production mode, I can just as much, sit at home. So I think we will see a combination of that, and I also think that that will also affect whether we travel or not, because I think that there will be some travel, but we will be very, very choosy and picky on which travels we do, and that we will be thinking a lot more about the purpose of the travel. So I think there will be a combination of work going forward. But an interesting perspective for us is that we have been promoting use of remote surveys for a long time. So live streaming from phones or tablets when we do surveys of assets or testing and things that we do, and also to try to let the clients engage with our global network of experts. And that has had, a steady gradual uptake, but with the COVID, it really bang, suddenly it was kind of the normal way to do things. So we did more than 2,000 remote surveys the first 4 months. So it shows that when things like the COVID happen, it is possible to change quite quickly and also implement measures at scales very quickly. So I think that's an reflection to bring with us.
So you both changed the way you work, both people in the offices, but actually the service, the way you do the service to your customers.
The way we deliver a survey.
So and you really had to change a lot of things at the same time.
But luckily we were, in a way prepared, because we've seen the possibility of the technologies, but that suddenly gave an appetite to actually use it big scale. I think that's what happened.